Alright, so just a little over a month ago, we got a brand new film in the Monsterverse franchise, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. I made a whole review on it, you can go check that out. But today, I'm going to rank every single Monsterverse project. This includes, I believe, the 5 movies, and then the 2 TV shows, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and then the Skull Island anime show on Netflix that I did also check out. But before I get started, please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell, and comment down below what is your ranking of the Monsterverse. What are your opinions on it as a whole? For me, my last ranking, I told myself that I was not a fan of the franchise. There's so many movies that I just felt like were wasted potential. This rewatch of the entire franchise made me realize that this is one of the best cinematic universes out there, that every single movie impacts the other movie that came before it, and so it's just a franchise that makes sense and one that I really did enjoy on my rewatch. With that said, we're gonna get started with my last place, which is number 7, Skull Island, the anime show on Netflix. Now, to be clear, I don't think there's a single bad thing in this franchise. I enjoyed the majority of it. There are issues with some of my lower projects down here, but this one, for me, I thought was probably the one with the best characters. Out of the entire Monsterverse franchise, this one probably had the most interesting characters, because every time I clicked on an episode, and the moment that episode ended, I instantly had the repulsiveness to click on the next episode, because the character arcs, there's an intriguing mystery that you want to know all the answers to, and so it's an easy to binge show, half-an-hour episodes. You can just binge the show and learn all the answers, and most of them give a good payoff throughout the entire show. It's one of them that I was not expecting to like, because I don't like the animation style, but when I got out of it, I was like, yeah, that was a pretty solid show. I really did enjoy that show. In fact, I watched it not even knowing it was part of the Monsterverse. I just clicked on it because I was looking for a half-hour show to watch, and I'm glad I checked it out because it's pretty fine. Did have a couple issues with the show. King Kong, obviously the show isn't called King Kong Skull Island, but Skull Island is known for Kong, and he doesn't show up until like the last 2 episodes, rarely. So it just kind of felt like we were missing something a little bit along the way. Also, I'm just not a huge fan of the animation style, so while it's the weakest thing inside of the Monsterverse, I still think it's worth a watch as I believe there's 8 episodes, each of them half an hour. They're intriguing. They do its job by making you just want to sit back and want to watch the next one. Ooh, I want to watch the next one. Ooh, that I cannot wait to see where this plotline goes, so I'd say it's overall a solid show. 6th place, Godzilla vs. Kong. This is a movie that came out in 2021. My review was pretty negative. I was not a fan of it back when it came out, and that's also when my ranking happened. It was last place in my ranking. Now, I've grown some more respect to the movie, but it's more because the film after it, Godzilla x Kong, made it better, and because like Monarch: Legacy of Monsters made it better. It's enhanced by the things that came after it, which is another reason why this franchise is so good. But this movie, for me, was a much better watch than it was when I first checked it out in 2021. The monster action, after watching this movie, I saw it 3 times on HBO Max trying to get anything, like trying to force myself to like the movie, and I just couldn't do it. But I saw it 3 times, and going back and rewatching it all these years later, it's cool to see all these monster fight sequences, because those were the best part of the movie back then, and they're still the best part of the movie now. They all look pretty great. The CGI is fantastic, obviously, as is for all of these movies. The characters, they're fine. I'm not like the biggest fan. I don't go to Monsterverse movies for the characters, but they're not the most annoying things. They're fun to hang out with. Specifically, the group that is with King Kong going into the Hollow Earth. I always felt like my main negative for this movie was the fact that they go to Hollow Earth. I never was a fan of the Hollow Earth plotline. Like I mentioned, it enhanced by exploring that more in Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and enhanced by exploring that way more in Godzilla x Kong, so it's not all that bad. The movie does take itself a little too seriously. Like, if this was like Godzilla x Kong, where not a single thing makes sense, it's just entertaining dumbness from start to finish, I would have liked it much more, because there's definitely sequences that try to do like an emotional arc, and That's not what I go to a giant lizard fighting giant monkey movie for, so I felt like they fell flat, and so it grew on me. I enjoyed watching the movie much more than I did back in 2021, where I just thought, wow, I was not a fan of that at all. But it's still one of the weaker things of the Monsterverse, and still wish it would have been more fun than trying to take itself really seriously. Kicking off our top 5, Monarch Legacy of Monsters. This was a show that I don't have Apple TV Plus, so I'm just gonna say right here. Actually, I have Apple TV Plus now, but I didn't at the time. I had to pirate it, so like I feel really bad for confessing that, but I really did. But it's also a show that people were like being positive to negative on, like when I saw reviews, it could go either way, like, oh, this show is awesome, to, oh yeah, this show is weak. And for the most part, I thought it was a really, really solid show. Again, the characters in the TV shows, these are very compelling characters, I think. Specifically when you're like, I believe it was 2015, a year after Godzilla 2014. And then you also get the characters back in the past. That was a very unique way to explore this, because you're exploring the Monarch roots while not also making a complete show out of the Monarch roots, because that wouldn't have been as entertaining as this was. You have a show about characters, and the main plot of like the 2015 plot line is that it's characters and how they learn and how they grow from the Godzilla 2014 attack, which was a very interesting thing to explore, because you never really explore in these movies anymore how the characters get impacted after Godzilla or these giant titans destroy the world. Like, heck, in Godzilla times Kong, the movie is basically just like people die and nobody cares. Nobody is impacted by that at all, and it's really neat to see how these characters are living after the 2014 attacks. And so that was a really good part as well. The cast is, it's mixed for me, because the script can be kind of weird here. So there are times the characters are way too whiny. There's some plot lines that I don't think really worked at all about the movie. The plot line with Wyatt Russell and Kurt Russell, that was a really cool thing, how you hired both these guys. Kurt Russell plays the past, Wyatt Russell plays the current. And I think that was a very cool thing to explore in the show, and they were fine. And the Kurt Russell plotline about him going back in the past, that's emotional, and it's pretty cool. The way it all wraps up in the end is very, very good. But there's some plot lines here that don't fully come to fruition. I forget her name. I'm gonna throw her up on the screen. Blammo, she's right there. But her plot line about like what's her past with Apex, it didn't fully come to fruition in the episode we explore her past. It doesn't go interesting until like the last, I'd say, 15 minutes of the season, when you learn what the company she was actually. And so there are a couple things that fell flat like that. Multiple sequences where the characters can feel too whiny. Like there's an infamous scene where the dad just like tries to save their kids by telling them to go away, and instead of going away and like being grateful that he saved their lives, they're just like, oh, boo-hoo, he gave us away even though Godzilla was coming and we probably would have died. There's cool things like that, but I mean, overall, I think the show was very solid with compelling characters, and for a show about the legacy of Monarch, there was some surprisingly great monster action as well. Fourth place, Godzilla King of the Monsters. This was a movie that actually, this was last place, I believe, in the last ranking I did. Actually, I believe it was King of the Monsters in 2014 and then Godzilla vs. Kong. I must have been a crack addict back in the day, because it's completely changed. But anyways, this was a movie that I mentioned back in my previous ranking that I could barely get through the first 15 minutes, and that is still here. The first 15-20 minutes of this movie are just so boring, and I blatantly thought to myself, this is gonna be a very boring movie, isn't it? Like, I was genuinely prepared to be bored out of my mind, and I wouldn't have been surprised, because the first 15 minutes are pretty bad, but after that, it gets to some very good Godzilla action, to where I think this is the best Godzilla action inside the entire Monsterverse. You get the whole plotline about the human characters trying to raise up the monsters, and that doesn't quite make sense, because, like, you're gonna try to save the world by killing half the population. That was a really dumb plotline, but that gives us some cool sequences to have Rodan, not Mothra, but maybe, yeah, Mothra's in this movie, King Ghidorah. It has those areas to give us these monsters that are just like so many crammed into one movie. And it's just cool to see the many action sequences, because for the majority of the movie, besides like I'd say a 15 to 20 minute break, it's just Godzilla killing monsters with the humans watching. And it is endlessly entertaining. I was entertained out of my head throughout this entire movie. This was one of the most fun monster action movies in this franchise, because it's called King of the Monsters. There's so many monsters, and in the end, it proves why Godzilla is king. Godzilla is awesome, and he is awesome in this movie, and just all the cool monster action makes this movie super worth watching, even after the first 15 minutes are beyond boring. The human characters are, I think, the weakest in this entire franchise. They're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, Godzilla's here. There's a couple guys that just do wisecracks, but none of the plots that they have genuinely compel me. But for a movie that is in the Monsterverse, this is the movie with the most Godzilla action, and this is the movie with the most amount of stuff that I wanted out of this franchise, that this is a very good movie. But these other movies are so good that it has to be at number 4. Place, I am going with Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. If I rewatch this one and then rewatch 2014 and then rewatch the, what's number 1, I could, easily switch in between days. I really liked all these movies. This was a movie that is just endlessly dumb. Nothing about it makes a single sense at all. It's so dumb. The dumbest movie you will ever watch. And it's a blast for that. It doesn't care what's happening. It doesn't care about the human characters. The human characters will just go to Hollow Earth, and then like the dumbest stuff will happen that you will ever see in a film. And then you'll just be like, wow, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure having fun. There will be sequences in this movie where, like, for 15 to 30 minutes, you're just following King Kong and Diddy Kong as they go exploring the whatever they're at, and it is endlessly entertaining. It is the funnest movie in the franchise. Funnest isn't a word. It's the most entertaining. It's the funniest. It is so dumb and stupid, and there's really hard to try to nitpick and find negatives throughout this movie, because like the movie's goal is to be stupid. With Godzilla vs. Kong, that movie tried to have like serious plot, and it feels way too serious. While in this one, they learned the right lessons and decided, screw it, we're throwing it all out here. Like Godzilla is going beast mode. He's draining all the nuclear energy and becoming pink. They fight. They have a literally pro boxing match at the pyramids. Like, it is so dumb, and it is so endlessly entertaining. Do you want Godzilla? Do you want King Kong to have a robot hand? You do? Okay. He has a robot hand for some reason. Scar King, I think, is one of the best villains in the franchise. I think he's only beat out by King Ghidorah. So I think he was really great as well. What prevents this movie from being higher is I do think they could have shaved off about 10 minutes near the end of the movie. There are a couple things that I was like, oh, okay, that doesn't need to be there. Ooh, okay, it'd be better if that was just yanked out of the timeline. But I thought it was just endlessly entertaining. A movie that I highly recommend. It gets the Zachary Movie Chat must-see movie, but it's only 3rd on this list because these other 2 movies I think are really good as well. In 2nd place, we got Godzilla 2014. This was a movie that is just enhanced all so very well by Gareth Edwards' directing abilities. He is able to make Godzilla the absolutely scary monster that he is. I saw this like a week after I watched Godzilla -1, so I was still on like the Godzilla, oh my god, he's a freaking beast, he's terrifying train. And watching this movie and seeing that Godzilla and all the destruction they caused is genuinely terrifying was one of the best parts about this movie. It really works as you're following these characters and they're just sitting there seeing like Godzilla, this big giant thing, just fighting. The majority of the movie is through that perspective of the characters, and that is something that is so cool, because when you follow the characters, You could genuinely be terrified and feel the emotions they are feeling, and that's what really, really works throughout this movie. And I think that Godzilla was, like, this is probably the best Godzilla design in this franchise, the scariest I've been in this entire franchise. I didn't like the movie try to make him a hero at the end, but it was genuinely terrifying, and the monster action is very entertaining as well. Like, with all the monsters, again, when you're put in the perspective of the human beings watching all this happen, it's explosive, it's terrifying, and it is absolutely great. And watching this movie, I could not get enough of it. The moment it ended, I wanted to watch it again, because this is something that I really wish they made, like, a sequel to this with Gareth Edwards, and making it again Godzilla, this giant villain, because it was great. Proved again why Gareth Edwards is one of my favorite directors in Hollywood. I've only seen 2 of his movies, this and The Creator from last year. I loved all of them. I need to watch Rogue One. I think he's a fantastic director, and he's doing the Jurassic World movies and the new one, and he did fantastic with this movie. It was a fantastic film with a fantastic direction. I cannot wait for that movie. Godzilla 2014 freaking rules. But number 1, Kong Skull Island. The last place was a Skull Island project, and first place is a Skull Island project, because this is the movie that, for all the time, that even when I didn't like this franchise, I genuinely thought this was a really good movie, and I still continue to think this is a really good movie. The cast here is a big standout. They hired a whole bunch of actors that were in Marvel, and they have all this great chemistry with each other, that they're just a fun crew to watch on screen. And that really enhances the experience, because while you're just roaming through the jungle and all these monsters randomly show up, you're with characters that you want to survive. You want to see these characters survive. You don't feel like, okay, I just want to see them get killed or eaten. And when they get killed or eaten, it's entertaining. But there's also, like, emotional spots here and there where characters are actually given character arcs and then they die, and then it's just really, really, like, emotional and stuff like that. And so this is the one I've always had a soft spot for. Samuel L. Jackson is absolutely crazy in it. King Kong looks great when we get to the final, I'd say, 30 minutes. It's endlessly entertaining with Kong fighting the skull crawlers. The monster action is still great. It looks really good. And this was a film that, like, when it first came out, people were mostly mixed negative on it. And I was always like, yeah, I love that movie. I loved it. I absolutely adored it. And every time I rewatch it, I realize that I just love it just a little bit more. And that's why it has to be number 1, because it's the OG Monsterverse movie that I've always loved. And I can't kick it out of that one spot. What is your guys' ranking of the Monsterverse films? I want to know all that and more. I'm going to have a Knuckles review coming up. That's going to be a rough one. And then I got a couple more videos coming up. Go check out my second channel if you're interested in sports content or other niche kind of videos that I can't really post on this channel. And with that said, thank you guys for clicking on this video. And with that said, subscribe, join the Nerd Army. Peace out.